October 10th, 2025, 9 p.m., Chandler, Arizona. 19-year-old Daniel Sublasky pulls into an apartment complex parking lot. He's here to meet two people, Mateo Bynum and Tanutamani Richards, former classmates, people he's known for years. They arrive in separate vehicles. Both are armed. Bynum has an AR-style rifle. Richards has a handgun. Daniel sees them. He walks over to one of their cars and hears the moment that seals his fate. He gets in, voluntarily. No force, no coercion. He trusts them enough to sit in a car with two armed men at night in a parking lot. Within minutes, a fight breaks out. Gunfire erupts. Daniel stumbles out of the vehicle and collapses on the sidewalk with multiple gunshot wounds. Next to his body, police find 3 shell casings, 2 live rounds, and a gallon-sized Ziploc bag filled with marijuana. Bynum and Richards flee in opposite directions. Daniel's father, Roy, an associate pastor, would later say, "I don't think anything would ever prepare you for what I saw. My son was beaten. He didn't look like the sweet Daniel that I know. He had holes in him." Here's the question that haunts this case. Why do young men keep trusting the people who kill them? This isn't a story about a random shooting. This isn't about a stranger lurking in the shadows. This is about betrayal. According to FBI data, 80% of homicide victims personally knew their killer. Among young men aged 18 to 24, that number is even higher. And in most cases, the victim voluntarily put themselves in the situation where they were killed. They got in the car. They met up at the agreed location. They showed up to settle the dispute. They trusted people they shouldn't have. Daniel Sublasky's case is a textbook example of this deadly pattern, and it's playing out in communities across America every single day. Chandler, Arizona is one of the safest cities in the Phoenix metro area. In 2024, they saw violent crime drop 25%. They had only 2 homicides the entire year. Daniel's death was Chandler's first homicide of 2025. It shattered that streak and exposed an uncomfortable truth. Even in safe communities, young men are killing each other over disputes that, from the outside, seem completely meaningless. Tonight, we're going to break down exactly what happened that October night, the evidence, the investigation, the aftermath. But more importantly, we're going to explore why this keeps happening and what one grieving father is doing to make sure other families don't suffer the same fate. Daniel Sublasky was 19 years old. He worked as a maintenance technician, learning a trade to build his future. He loved fishing with his father, spending hours on boats or standing on piers together. He also helped at Life Community Church in Gilbert, where his father Roy serves as an associate pastor. Daniel worked with children's programs, helped with outreach, participated in feeding the homeless. On paper, Daniel sounds like a success story, a young man with supportive family, community involvement, work ethic. But Roy Sublasky, in his grief, has been brutally honest about something most fathers wouldn't admit. Daniel was involved in risky associations. That's pastor speak for, "My son was making dangerous choices." The gallon bag of marijuana found at the crime scene confirms it. That's not personal use. That's distribution-level quantity. Daniel was either buying, selling, or involved in a transaction that night. And that's where Mateo Bynum and Tanutamani Richards enter the story. Both 19 years old, both former classmates of Daniel's, cousins to each other, and, according to Roy, people Daniel trusted. My son, in a time where he needed great compassion and great mercy, it wasn't there, Roy said. That statement is loaded. In a time where he needed suggests Daniel was in some kind of trouble. Maybe he owed money. Maybe he needed help getting out of a situation. Maybe he was trying to make things right. Whatever it was, he thought these former classmates would help him. He was wrong. Roy's transformation in the aftermath is remarkable. Instead of hiding his son's involvement with drugs, he's acknowledged it publicly. Instead of demanding vengeance, he's focused on prevention. "I don't want any parent to ever have to go through this again," Roy said. "If there's anything we can do to try to prevent that from happening in our community, Chandler, Gilbert, the East Valley, that's what I'll dedicate my life to." He's planning youth mentorship programs focused on teaching compassion, mercy, conflict resolution, and nonviolence. He's using his platform at Life Community Church and his connections in the Gilbert community to reach kids before they become perpetrators or victims. Because Roy understands something crucial. Daniel isn't just a victim. Daniel made choices that led him to that parking lot, and Bynum and Richards made choices that turned a meeting into a murder. All of it was preventable. Let's reconstruct October 10th, 2025, using police reports, court documents, and witness statements. The meeting was prearranged. Daniel knew where to go, an apartment complex near McQueen and Warner Roads. He knew who he was meeting, and critically, he went alone. Around 9 p.m., Bynum and Richards arrive at the complex in separate vehicles. This detail is important. Why separate cars? Coordination, planning, making sure they have escape routes if things go wrong. Both are armed. Bynum is carrying an AR-style handgun, a serious weapon, not something you casually bring to meet a friend. Richards has a revolver-type handgun. Daniel pulls up in his car. He sees them, and then he makes the fatal decision. He approaches one of their vehicles and gets into the passenger seat. Richards is the driver. Think about that moment. Daniel is sitting in a car. Richards is next to him, armed. Bynum approaches the vehicle from outside, also armed with an AR-style weapon. Daniel is trapped, whether he realizes it yet or not. According to court documents, a fight breaks out near the passenger side, right where Daniel is sitting. We don't know who started it. We don't know what triggered it. Was it about money? Did Daniel realize he was being set up? Did he try to defend himself? Did the transaction go wrong? What we know is that the fight escalates rapidly, and then gunfire. Multiple rounds are fired. Witnesses in the apartment complex hear the shots. People look out windows. Some immediately call 911. Daniel manages to get out of the car or is pushed out. He stumbles toward the front office of the complex, making it to the sidewalk before collapsing. Bynum and Richards don't help him. They don't call 911. They don't render aid to someone they've known for years. They run. They get in their separate vehicles and drive off in opposite directions, leaving Daniel bleeding out on the concrete. When Chandler police arrive minutes later, the scene tells a story. Evidence found: Daniel barely alive, multiple gunshot wounds. 3 9mm shell casings scattered around the passenger side of the vehicle. 2 live rounds that weren't fired. A knife on the ground. His cell phone, his car parked nearby, and that gallon-sized Ziploc bag filled with marijuana lying next to Daniel's body. EMTs rush Daniel to the hospital, but his injuries are too severe. He's pronounced dead shortly after arrival. His father Roy gets the call every parent dreads. By the time he arrives to identify the body, Daniel doesn't look like himself. The beating, the bullets. Roy describes it as the worst thing he's ever seen. We wake up in the morning, check the room. Is he home? No, he's not coming home. Chandler police move fast. Within hours, they've tracked Bynum and Richards to an apartment in the same complex where the shooting occurred. How did they find them so quickly? Multiple factors. First, witnesses. Residents of the complex saw the vehicles. Some may have recognized Bynum and Richards as people who'd been staying there. Second, Daniel's phone. Text messages arranging the meeting, call logs, GPS data showing he drove to that specific location intentionally. Third, the fact that the suspects stayed in the area. They didn't flee to Mexico or go into hiding. They went back to their apartment, overconfident, careless, or perhaps not fully grasping what they'd just done. Police obtain a search warrant and execute it that same night. What they find makes the case airtight. Multiple firearms, including an AR-style rifle matching witness descriptions, a black muscle shirt with visible bloodstains, drugs, significant amounts of cash, ammunition matching the shell casings at the scene. By the morning of October 11th, less than 12 hours after the shooting, both Mateo Bynum and Tanutamani Richards are in custody, charged with second-degree murder. The charge is significant. Second-degree murder in Arizona means the killing was intentional but not premeditated. It arose from a situation that escalated rather than a cold-blooded planned execution. That fits what witnesses described: a fight, then gunfire. Not an ambush, not a calculated hit. But here's the thing. Both suspects were armed. They arrived in separate vehicles. They had the weapons ready. That suggests they expected potential conflict. They were prepared for violence. So why second-degree and not first-degree murder? Prosecutors likely concluded they couldn't prove premeditation beyond reasonable doubt. The evidence suggests the shooting resulted from a dispute during the meeting, not a plan to kill Daniel before they arrived. It's a strategic decision. Second degree is easier to prove and still carries 10 to 25 years in Arizona. Let's address what everyone's thinking, but few people want to say out loud. The marijuana complicates this story. Daniel Sublasky wasn't an innocent bystander gunned down for no reason. He went to that apartment complex for a purpose, and that purpose almost certainly involved drugs. Was he selling? Buying in bulk? Delivering? We don't know. Police have conspicuously avoided addressing the marijuana in any public statements. But that gallon bag tells a story. That's not recreational use, that's business. And drug transactions between young men who know each other are notoriously volatile. They're built on trust that's easily broken. Money gets miscounted, product quality is disputed, someone feels disrespected, debts go unpaid. Add weapons to that mix, and in Arizona, where gun ownership is common and largely unrestricted, young men often carry, and you have a recipe for tragedy. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Daniel may have been involved in illegal activity. That doesn't mean he deserved to die. But it means he put himself in a high-risk situation with people who were armed and potentially dangerous. Roy Sublasky has acknowledged this publicly, which takes remarkable courage. Most parents would try to hide their child's involvement in drugs, paint them as a perfect victim. But Roy understands that honesty is the only path to prevention. If we pretend Daniel was faultless, we can't learn from his mistakes. We can't warn other young people about the risks of trusting the wrong people or getting involved in illegal markets where disputes are settled with violence, not lawyers. This case also fits into a disturbing pattern in East Valley. You may have heard about the Preston Lord case, a 16-year-old beaten to death at a party in Queen Creek in 2023. Or the Gilbert Goons, a group of affluent teenagers involved in multiple violent assaults. According to Arizona Department of Public Safety data, individuals aged 18 to 24 are the second most affected by violent crime in the state, with over 3,200 victims reported in recent years. Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell has publicly addressed what she calls a growing aggression and readiness, almost eagerness, to use weapons among young people. Chandler Police Chief Brian Chapman has implemented intervention programs starting in 6th grade, covering conflict resolution, mental health, and peer accountability. The Chandler City Council has passed new ordinances prohibiting unruly gatherings and banning brass knuckles for minors. But here's the question nobody wants to answer. Is any of this actually working? Because despite all the programs, all the interventions, all the awareness, young men keep killing each other. They keep trusting people they shouldn't. They keep bringing weapons to disputes. They keep choosing violence over walking away. Daniel Sublasky is just the latest name on a growing list. As of December 2025, Mateo, Bynum, and Tanutamani Richards remain in Maricopa County custody, both charged with second-degree murder. No trial date has been announced. The case is working through pre-trial proceedings, evidence review, witness preparation, possible plea negotiations. In Arizona, second-degree murder carries 10 to 25 years. Given the circumstances, firearms used, evidence of coordination, the fact that 2 defendants are involved, prosecutors will likely push for sentences toward the maximum. If convicted and sentenced to the upper range, Bynum and Richards will be in their early to mid-40s when released. Their entire 20s and 30s spent in prison. For what? A dispute over marijuana? Money? Disrespect? Meanwhile, Roy Sublasky held Daniel's funeral on October 25, 2025, at Life Community Church. The family created a fundraiser to cover medical and funeral expenses. But Roy isn't just grieving, he's mobilizing. He's reached out to schools, youth organizations, and community groups across the East Valley. His mission? Teach young people conflict resolution, empathy, and the value of walking away from dangerous situations. It's growing too much, way too much, Roy said about youth violence in the area. His message to young people is simple. The people you trust can hurt you. The situations you think you can control can spiral. The choices you make at 19 can end your life or put you in prison for decades. Daniel Sublasky got into a car with 2 people he trusted. That decision, that single moment of misplaced trust, cost him his life. This isn't a unique story. It's a pattern playing out across America. Young men trusting the wrong people. Young men bringing weapons to disputes. Young men choosing violence when things don't go as planned. The tragedy isn't just Daniel's death. It's that Mateo Bynum and Tanutamani Richards destroyed their own lives too. At 19, they made choices that will define them forever as murderers. 3 young men, 1 dead, 2 in prison, families destroyed, a community traumatized, all preventable. Roy Sublasky is trying to break this cycle. He's taking his pain and turning it into purpose, reaching kids before they become statistics. But he can't do it alone. Parents need to have hard conversations with their children about risk, trust, and violence. Young people need to understand that walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. Communities need to invest in intervention programs that actually work. And maybe, just maybe, we need to stop pretending that these deaths are inevitable. They're not. They're the result of choices, and choices can change. If you know someone caught up in conflicts that are escalating over drugs, money, disrespect, whatever, intervene, say something. It might save their life. Because the alternative is a father standing in a hospital looking at his son's body and saying he had holes in him. No parent should ever have to say those words. What do you think? How do we stop young men from trusting the people who kill them? Let me know in the comments.
With more on this, Maria?
Troy Tram, his father is actually a pastor at his church, so he's really leaning on his faith and his community to cope with this tragedy. But he still has many unanswered questions about what happened that night.
I don't think anything would ever prepare you for what I saw.
On Friday night, the son, Roy Sublasky, sees as the little boy he would take fishing.
Daniel was a fun-loving kid, all boy, wild kid, and he loved to fish.
Was in a hospital bed fighting for his life after being shot several times.
My son was beaten, and he didn't look like the sweet Daniel that I know. He had holes in him, and we were terrified.
Court documents say 19-year-old Daniel Sublasky was parked outside an apartment complex near McQueen and Warner Roads when 19-year-old Mateo Bynum arrived with his cousin Tanutamani Richards before a fight turned deadly.
He knows them, and he trusted them.
Police say Bynum got out of his car and opened fire. Richards was also seen with a revolver. Both got away before police arrived. All that was left was Daniel, lying on the sidewalk, surrounded by shell casings and blood.
I wonder what was happening, what was going on in his mind, what was going on with him, his last moments, what he was thinking, but I'll never know.
Daniel died from his injuries the next morning.
And I pray that no parent would have to endure what we have seen.
Now, Roy wants to turn tragedy into purpose, calling on the community to teach compassion and end teen violence.
You know, my son, in a time where he needed great compassion and great mercy, it wasn't there.
Police later tracked the suspects to an apartment